The morning sun rose slow over the red mesas, spilling its light across the empty plains. The desert wind carried the scent of juniper and dust, and somewhere far off, a hawk cried over the bones of a forgotten trail. That was when Luke Carson, a cowboy with no home but the saddle, and no company but his horse, rode into the lands of the Apache Red River tribe. The bargain. Luke had been riding 3 days without rest. His horse, a loyal bay named Copper, had gone lame after a scuffle with rustlers near Silver Creek. The animal's leg was swollen, and Luke knew he wouldn't make it another 50 miles on foot. At the edge of the valley, he spotted smoke curling from a cluster of lodges near the river. He approached slowly, raising a hand in peace. The men at the camp eyed him with suspicion. They were painted for the sun, their faces strong and proud. A tall figure stepped forward, the chief, gray-haired but broad-shouldered, eyes sharp as obsidian. Luke dismounted, hat in hand. "I come meaning no harm," he said. "Just a traveler needing a good horse. I can pay." The chief studied him for a long moment, then spoke in accented English. "You carry silver?" Luke reached into his pocket and pulled out a small leather pouch. "Not much," he said. $12 in coin." A murmur rippled through the men. The chief looked at him again, then nodded once. $12, he repeated. "You buy my fastest horse." Luke blinked, surprised by the fairness of the offer. "That's more than generous, chief." The old man's lips curved in the faintest hint of a smile. "We trade with honor here." The deal was made. Luke handed over his coins, and the chief called for one of his warriors to bring a young stallion, tall, dark, and restless. Luke ran a hand along its neck. The horse snorted but didn't pull away. "Strong," Luke said with admiration. But before he could mount, 2 figures stepped out from behind the chief's lodge. The chief's daughters. They were women young, proud, and graceful. One had hair black as midnight, tied with a strip of red cloth. The other, lighter and softer, with eyes the color of the desert sky after rain. The chief spoke to them in his own tongue. Then he turned to Luke. "My daughters will go with you," he said simply. Luke's brow shot up. "Beg pardon?" The men around the camp went quiet. The chief's gaze didn't waver. "When a stranger buys from our people," the chief said, "trust must ride with the trade. They will guide you to the borderlands, see that no harm comes to you." Luke hesitated. He didn't want offense, but neither did he want trouble. "That's kind, chief, but I travel alone." The older daughter stepped forward. "You cannot refuse," she said, her voice steady. "Our father has spoken. The path ahead is dangerous. We ride until your debt of friendship is paid." Luke scratched the back of his neck. "Guess I don't have much say, do I?" The younger sister smiled slightly. "Not in this land, cowboy." The journey begins. They set out that afternoon, Luke and the 2 daughters of the Red River chief. The older one was called Nita, meaning bear. She was quiet, sharp-eyed, and spoke little. The younger, Asha, was all light, curious, warm, with a laugh that carried even over the desert wind. At first, they rode in silence. Luke tried not to stare, but he couldn't help being struck by their poise. They didn't ride behind him as followers. They rode beside him as equals, their horses moving in rhythm with his. When the sun dipped low, they made camp among the rocks. Luke gathered wood, Nita built the fire, and Asha prepared dried meat and roots. Over supper, Luke finally spoke. "Chief said you're to make sure I get safe to the border. You think I'll need protecting?" Nita looked at him without expression. "There are white men out there who shoot first and talk later. You may be one of them, or you may not. We will find out." Asha laughed softly. "Don't mind her, cowboy. She says that to everyone." Luke grinned. "Guess I'll take my chances." Under the same sky. Days turned to nights, and the journey stretched long. They crossed canyons carved like scars, and streams so clear they mirrored the stars. Luke learned that Nita had once been promised to a warrior who never returned from battle. Asha had never left her father's land. She dreamed of seeing towns, trains, the ocean. They asked Luke about his home. He told them he didn't have one. "My folks died when I was 16, he said. "Been writing ever since. Ain't much to go back to." Nita nodded. "Then the wind is your home." Asha tilted her head, smiling. "And your horse your only friend." Luke chuckled. "Until now, maybe." That night, while Nita kept watch, Luke and Asha sat by the fire, trading stories. She told him how her people believed that every man carried two hearts, one for himself and one for the road. "Which one do you follow?" she asked. Luke thought for a long time before answering. "The one that hurts less," he said quietly. Asha smiled sadly. "Then you're still running." He didn't deny it. Ambush at Dry Creek. By the 5th day, the trio reached the edge of the borderlands, a stretch of arid plain known for outlaws and worse. The sun blazed high, and the air shimmered like glass. They stopped at Dry Creek to water the horses. Luke was filling a canteen when he caught a glint in the distance, sunlight off a rifle barrel. "Down!" he shouted. Gunfire split the air. Bandits, 3 of them, thundered over the ridge. Luke grabbed his revolver and fired back, hitting one clean through the shoulder. Nita darted behind a boulder, drawing a bow from her saddle. Her arrow flew straight and silent, striking another attacker in the leg. Asha screamed as the 3rd rider charged toward her. Luke ran, throwing himself between them, shooting from the hip. The bandit toppled from his horse with a cry. When the dust settled, the ground was still again. Luke was bleeding, a graze along his ribs. Asha dropped beside him, tears in her eyes. "You're hurt!" He waved her off, panting. "Just a scratch." Nita approached, wiping blood from her arm. "You fight well, Cowboy," she said. "Now you have earned our respect." Luke smiled weakly. "That mean I can finally ride alone?" Asha shook her head, a playful glint in her eyes. "Not until we say so." The meaning of the deal. They camped one last night before reaching the trading post. Luke sat by the fire, staring into the flames. He turned to Nita. "I need to ask you something. That day your father sent you with me, why?" "Really?" Nita stared into the darkness before answering. "In our way, when a stranger pays a fair price, he becomes part of the story. You bought a horse with silver, but silver is only metal. My father sent us so that your name would mean more than coins. He gave you trust. And trust must travel with people, not things." Luke let that sink in. "So this whole time, I wasn't buying a horse." Asha smiled gently. "No. You were being tested." He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Well, guess I paid the right price then." Asha looked at him, her eyes glimmering in the firelight. "You paid it with more than money, Luke Carson." The farewell. At dawn, they reached the trading post that marked the edge of Apache land. Beyond that point, the world of wagons, railroads, and whiskey began again. Luke dismounted and turned to the sisters. "This is where we part ways, I suppose?" Nita nodded. "Our duty is done." Asha hesitated. She stepped closer, her eyes filled with something Luke couldn't quite name. "You'll keep that horse safe?" "Course," he said. "Fastest beast I ever owned." She smiled. "Then maybe one day you'll ride back this way." Luke touched the brim of his hat. "Maybe I will." He turned to mount his horse, but stopped when Nita spoke softly behind him. "Luke Carson," she said, "our father was right. $12 was a small price. You gave us more, honor, courage, and a story our people will tell. Asha took a step closer, her voice trembling. And if you do come back, remember that not all deals are made with money. Luke smiled, the first real smile he'd felt in years. I reckon I won't forget that. He swung into the saddle and looked back one last time. The sisters stood in the morning light, hair blowing in the desert wind, two figures of grace and fire. Then he rode away, the new horse galloping strong beneath him, carrying not just a man, but the weight of a promise. Epilogue, the Song of the Plains. Months later, travelers passing through the Red River lands told of a cowboy who rode like the wind and spoke the Apache tongue better than most traders. They said he carried two feathers tied to his saddle, one red, one white, symbols of friendship and peace. When asked where he got them, he'd smile faintly and answer, "Cost me $12, and a lesson worth more than gold." And somewhere out there, under the same white sky, two sisters watched from the cliffs as a rider vanished into the horizon. His hat tilted low, his horse strong, and the memory of the deal that changed all their lives carried forever in the wind.